Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Principle of Polarity. Today, we will be discussing ownership. And as usual, I'm going to start this podcast off with a quote. Prioritize your problems and take care of them one at a time. The highest priority first. Don't try to do everything at once or you won't be successful. I explain how a leader who tries to take on too many problems simultaneously will likely fail at all of them. And that's a quote by Jocko Willink. And I know that in my previous podcast, y'all have heard me mention Jocko Willink several times. Jocko Willink, David Goggins, Rob Dial. These are all people that I go to for information. I go to for, enlightenment on how I feel and how I should feel, how I should handle situations, how to better myself. These are people that, in my opinion, have, locked on to certain ideas or perspectives in life that have helped them attain or obtain success. What success means to them, not necessarily what success means in a world view. And by large, I don't look up to like movie stars or celebrities and stuff like that. Um, I find myself looking up to like military personnel, people like that. Um, Basically, that's just because like that's how I was wired, and I was serving in the military. Even when I was a young boy, um, I always looked up to those who were in the military more than, movie stars and other people. I just felt like I identified with them more. And especially after going through the military, like I relate to what they say more often. And even though I wasn't a Navy SEAL, there's some aspects of training that I went through that are relatable. It's not Navy SEALs is like way up here. They're the elite of the elite, but that doesn't discount anything that the Marine Corps does or puts their Marines through. Um, so Jocko Willink is one of the people that I go to a lot. Usually when I'm driving, instead of listening to music, I put on the Jocko podcast and listen to that when I'm riding my bike, when I'm going on a run, when I'm going on a ruck, um, when I'm working out in the gym. Usually I'm blaring Jocko's podcast. Um, it's not for everyone, kind of like David Goggins. He has, I feel like he has an approach that could be um, acceptable by everybody, but there's people receive things and take things differently. So I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there that Jocko might not be appealing to. Um, but Jocko Willink, I think he is a great role model and a great, you know, idea of what we should aspire to be, um, given our hardships and what we go through in life. Now, David Goggins and Jocko Willink have been through the same training or similar trainings, but their life outside of that training that they went through was drastically different. So even within Jocko Willink and David Goggins, there's still like a comparison that can be made to you know David Goggins' life, from what I've read and stuff, was way more, you know, brutal, I guess you'd say. He underwent the abuse of his father and just seeing some very traumatic things at a young age, and also going with dealing with learning disabilities, and also being dealing with racism and a lot of other things before he, overcame all of that and became a Navy SEAL. And then even in being a Navy SEAL, he had to go through Navy SEAL boot camp like 3 times, or SEAL training, BUDS 3 times. Um, so again, when you're looking for inspiration, motivation, it's best to find somebody who you can relate to, or who you feel that you can receive that message from the best. Because just because one person might work for the person over here doesn't necessarily means that he'll communicate the message to you, or it'll be received on the same level as that other person. Because certain people that you listen to or that speak to you may have a message that's meant for you at a different position in your life. So you might not be in that position in your life to receive that message. Um, that's why I believe that it's good to have variety. On my phone, I have a podcast app, and there's probably 10, 15, maybe even 20 different podcasts that I listen to. And it's just dependent on my mood. I'm not always in the Jocko mood. I'm not always in the David Goggins mood. Sometimes I listen to like Rob Dial. And there's a few other, their names are, eluding me right now. I mean, even I listen to, his name just left my mind, Joe Rogan. The Joe Rogan podcast is awesome too. Um, it's much different than what is circulated in mainstream society, but Joe Rogan is awesome. So a little bit more about Jocko Willink. So Jocko Willink is a retired U.S. SEAL officer, co-author of the #1 New York Times bestseller Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win, Dichotomy of Leadership, host of the top-rated Jocko podcast, and co-founder of Echelon Front, where he serves as chief executive officer, leadership instructor, speaker, and strategic advisor. Jocko spent 20 years in the SEAL teams, starting as an enlisted SEAL and rising through the ranks to become a SEAL officer. As a commander of SEAL Teams 3 Task Unit Bruiser, the Battle of Ramadi, he orchestrated SEAL operations that helped the Ready First Brigade of the U.S. Army's 1st Armored Division bring stability to a violent, war-torn city. Task Unit Bruiser became the most highly decorated special unit. Now, I have several of Jocko Willink's books, and this podcast is just going to go over one of the main principles in his book, Extreme Ownership. But in Extreme Ownership, there's a lot of other information that he gives. One of the awesome things I appreciated about his book was that he gave a military story or a military example of this principle, and then he related that principle into real life. So, and that made it more, digestible or more conceivable for me, because I was able to apply it, like how would this apply in the military, and then how would this apply in real world, which is actually how I conceptualize a lot of things. And it's all about finding what works for you. So if you read something in a book, and it might be a war book or a psychology book or just a book that might not apply to your situation, it doesn't mean that the information is useless. It just means you have to find a way that translates that information in a meaningful way to your situation or to what you're going through. So in Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, which is his co-author or somebody he served on the teams with in Iraq, they present the application of their leadership skills in the Battle of Ramadi, Iraq, and then turning these skills into leading in business and organizational situations. But I'm trying to take it a step further and see how it can apply to you as an individual. Even though these are ways that you can maneuver as a leader to make your team more efficient, your organization more successful, and stuff like this. When I read the book, I argued to myself, and I can argue, with others, that these can be things that we can practice on an individual level. And then when we apply them in a larger concept, such as a team or organization, we'll be better for it because we already have it mastered at the individual level. So they always say, be the change that you want to see. So at the end of the day, everything starts with you. If you want your organization to be better, that change has to start with you. If you want your team to be better, that change has to start with you. What are you doing that's maybe not giving your team the best environment or the best instruction they need to be the best that they can be? So the main principle that we're going to be covering today is something that Jocko calls the 4 rules of combat. And what these 4 rules are cover and move, simple, prioritize and execute, and decentralization of command. So now that we got those out there, we're going to break them down a little bit. I'm going to discuss them first, how it applies to a business or a team setting, organizational setting, and then we can discuss how, it may apply to you as an individual, or how it can apply to you as an individual. So cover and move, it simply refers to teamwork. Smaller teams work with larger teams, and sometimes conflict arises, resulting in a safety problem or operational issue. The leader must quell the friction between teams, promote working and supporting with each other, and remain focused on the mission. So when I think about this, again, applying it to an individual mindset or individual perspective, what team do you have within yourself that battles against one another and can cause an operational issue? Well, it's your mind, body, and spirit. And I talk about this a lot, how if they're not in balance, then that can cause issues, make you rush and make decisions that you shouldn't make at that point in time, make you hesitate and not make decisions that you should have made. Uncertainty about how you're going to maneuver through life, what you need to do, where you need to be, and all type of aspects are surrounding the instability of your mind, body, and spirit. So we need to have our mind, body, and spirit centered, balanced, because when all 3 of them are working in concert, it makes you a better, more effective person, and it will usher you in the direction to make the best choices and to obtain the best results in your life. So that's cover and move. Simple. It's all about taking the complexities out of safety. If your employees are confused about their work and the attendant safety steps, extreme ownership requires you to ensure your team fully understands their roles and contribution to the success of the mission. So simple. What do you want in life? What's your reason why? Why do you get out of bed? Why do you do the things you do? What is stopping you from doing those things? What could you do better? These are simple questions that you could ask yourself that would drastically help you level up in life. And I'm still asking myself these questions. I have a few of them identified and nailed down. But there's still some gray areas that I need to work out and to improve on, which I do on a daily basis. Meditation helps me to get clarity in my life. Working out on a consistent basis has provided some type of clarity in my life as well. So I'm just continually trying to strive and trying to grow to be the best me that I can be, because life is not about a destination. It's about a journey. It's about the journey. So it's not like one point we're going to reach success or we're going to reach enlightenment and then there we are. It's something that we have to aspire to obtain each and every day. And then once we get there, we have to fight to maintain it. 3, prioritize and execute. This involves remaining a step ahead of real-time problems to avoid failure. That's a pretty easy transition between the business strategy and actual life. If we do what we need to do, on a daily basis, and just monitor our situation and be real with ourselves, we could stay a step ahead of issues before they become issues. One of Jocko's famous quotes, I would say the one that he's probably known by the most, is discipline equals freedom. If you have the discipline to get up and work out every single day, when that time may or may not arise that you need to jump up and do something physical or exert yourself past what you normally do on a daily basis, it won't be that hard or that intense to you because you work out every day already. You're already ready. Um, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. So you just have to prioritize things in your life. Um, you have to prioritize your family. You have to prioritize your job. You have to prioritize yourself because self care is definitely something that's um, not prioritized as much as it should be. You have to put self care in there. You can't just work, 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 and not give yourself and give time to your family, give time to your friends, your organization, and you're not taking the time you need for yourself. And that's when we start to see people uh, just fall apart and not be able to, perform at the level they need to perform at to be successful. And then last, we have decentralization of command. This refers to the number of people one can manage. So instead of, like outsourcing yourself so much, I think this is more just, being in charge of yourself. Accept responsibility for your own actions, you know, being the driving force behind what you want to do and what you have to do and what you need to do. Take the component of everybody else being in charge of your life um, out of the equation and be the sole captain of your ship, meaning that you drive the steering wheel. Now you have other people around you who may have input in your life or what you need to do and stuff like that, but ultimately you're in control of this vessel. Nobody else is in control of this vessel, even though it may seem like that's the case. It definitely isn't, because if you think about every situation, the only reason, you know people had power over you is because you let them have power over you. Like when we go to boot camp, you know we look at drill instructors as like guys, for those 13 weeks that you're going through boot camp. Well, in the Marines, it's 13 weeks. You feel like that's the highest form of life on earth because that is who controls you, and that is who, pretty much has a say over the daily things that happen in your life. But at the end of the day, if you really think about it, the reason that they have so much power is because you listen to them. Now, if you didn't listen to them, you would get kicked out of boot camp, but ultimately their power comes from your obedience, which in the larger scheme of life, the concept is still the same. You know, people's power over us is derived from our obedience. And whether that obedience is brought about by fear or respect depends on the situation and the relationship altogether. But at the end of the day, you're in command of this vessel, which is why you need to focus on having such a strong mind and such a strong spirit, because the body will break before the spirit does or before your mind does. So you need to focus on not only strengthening the outside, but the inside as well, because as you do that, when your mind, body, and spirit work in concert with one another, you're now creating a more, formidable foe against the issues that you may face in life and against the hardships that may come against you. You can be the strongest man in the world, but if your mentality is not where it needs to be, or, your spirit is not, settled or centered, then you're really only ready for physical hardships. And I would say like not even that, because you could have all the muscles in the world, but if you don't have like the mentality or the inner fortitude to push through whatever obstacle, then it really doesn't matter how strong you are, because all those muscles will be for naught. you know so today we were just talking about ownership. Being the concept is about leadership and organizational structure in the larger aspect, but in the individualistic aspect, I'm trying to apply it to the individual, and how, you could take these principles and apply them to your daily living. Um, because we can all use little tips and tricks to help us be a better us. And I believe that Jocko Willink has given us a very important aspect to that whole fight that we're trying to win in our lives.